This video is being made in response to those black people that keeps on saying that they wish that black people loved each other and that insist that black people are like crabs in a bucket, always pulling each other down rather than supporting each other. The eyes are useless when the mind has been brainwashed. Those black people who makes those negative commentaries don't actually know for certain that there's a deficit of black on black love, nor do they know for certain that our racial group never supports each other. Those who insist that they've confirmed these assessments based upon their own experiences are delusional, because it's not humanly possible to accurately assess the collective state of millions of people based upon anyone's individual experiences. It is not humanly possible to do so. Those negative assessments about our racial group were actually embedded into the minds of many black people by white media propagandists. The white society exclusively controls how black people are depicted within the mainstream media, and they write all of black people's statistics and societal narratives. Therefore, black people interpret our communities according to information and media images presented by white people. This literally means that white people owns black people's interpretation of our collective state. White social scientists determined a long time ago that by hiring white propagandists to negatively distort virtually everything that black people believes about ourselves, collectively, they could demoralize us, divide us, create black self-loathing, and also shift black people's collective aggressions away from the white oppressive society and redirect it towards ourselves. Keeping black people within this condition prevents us from unifying against the white oppressive society, and it also makes us much more easier to control. White propagandists have falsely negatively distorted black people's perception of ourselves. When looking at our true reality, there are many evidences that shows that black people do strongly love each other. Case, point, and proof. In 2012, when Trayvon Martin was murdered, millions of African Americans across the nation deeply mourned him as if they personally knew him. Many black moms cried as if he was their own child. Many black fathers became enraged at his senseless killing. And millions of black people were profoundly saddened across the nation. Millions took to social media, posting pictures of themselves wearing hoodies to show solitary support for Trayvon. Thousands took time off from their jobs and traveled down to Florida at their own expenses to support Trayvon's family and donate financial support to them. In 2020, when the video of George Floyd's murder was made public on social media, millions of black viewers burst into tears upon watching it. Many were unable to finish it. Millions went to the street and protested. Every black witness to the murder of George Floyd that testified cried while on the stand while doing so. One black witness testified about going home and crying uncontrollably, begging the spirit of George Floyd to forgive her for not doing more to have saved his life. During slavery, the most effective tool used for controlling the slaves was not the whip. It was by threatening the slave that their offsprings and mates would be sold off or killed if they became rebellious. Black people's love for each other was the most effective tool used for controlling our ancestors during slavery. Whenever a rebellious slave became a parent or fell in love, the white enslavers related because it provided them with leverage for controlling the stubborn slave. The point being made here is that black people's love for each other does strongly exist. Stop allowing the white society to manipulate your minds. Those black people that insist that our racial group never supports each other are also actively perceiving our racial group through the distorted lens of the white society. In 1995, Minister Louis Farrakhan called for millions of black men to show up in Washington, D.C. for what he called the Million Man March. On October 16, 1995, millions of African American men gathered and showed up in Washington, D.C. at their own expense, supporting Louis Farrakhan. In 2008 election of Barack Obama, he received more black votes than any president in U.S. history. Millions of black people that had never before voted in any previous election registered and voted for Obama. In some places, black people stood in voting lines for up to 5 hours. When President Obama won the election, millions of black people across the nation rejoiced in tears of joy. And during Obama's inauguration, he received the highest turnout of black people than in any previous inauguration. Black people traveled there at their own expenses, and in spite of the harsh cold weather conditions, stood out in the cold watching him being sworn in. These facts and many more refute the premise that black people never support each other. Those black people who insist that we're like crabs in a bucket, always pulling each other down, never support each other, are seeing our racial group through the distorted lens created by white propaganda designers. The white society divides black people by inundating us with fraudulent propaganda, telling us that we're the most divided. We then accept those false narratives and then function based upon them, thus making them true. This is what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy is a process through which an originally false narrative leads to its own confirmation. In a self-fulfilling prophecy, people start acting based upon the false narrative about themselves, thus making it true. To put it more simply, the white society profoundly divides black people by telling us we're the most divided. We then accept it as being true and then begin functioning based upon it as true, thus making it true. The white society deploys many nefarious disinformation warfare campaigns against black people. While we black people studied our Bibles as if it's true knowledge, white oppressive forces studied instead how to shape the minds of targeted populations in ways that serve their interests. Black people's focus on religion has caused us to have little understanding of the ramifications of the psychological warfare tactics that are being presently deployed against us by white oppressive forces. Millions of black people are intellectually blinded from seeing the war that's being systematically waged against our minds by white oppressive forces. The fact is, because our focus has been directed towards religion, we are therefore easy victims for those who have studied how to manipulate the human mind. Black people, we have been in America for more than 400 years. And if after 400 years, you're still thinking that a Bible brutally beaten upon beaten into the minds of our ancestors is the answer, or you believe we're being controlled by city slave syndrome, you are among the mentally enslaved. You need to elevate your mind and understand there are social sciences that are being used for maintaining white dominance. Social sciences are being used to manipulate us, to keep our collective aggression shifted away from the white society and redirected towards ourselves. It's time to elevate our minds and understand there are tactics that are being deployed against us. No black person is on the planet. None of us are able to confirm our negative assessment. It's because white society controls our narratives and they constantly feed us fraudulent negative narratives about ourselves. It's how they maintain their dominance over us. Because our enemies controls our narratives, they negatively distorts them in order to condition us to perceive ourselves through a false negative identity that aids them in maintaining their social dominance over us. It's time to wake up to our reality. One love and peace.